My name is Georgia, and at 55 years old, I thought I knew what unconditional love meant. For 2 years after losing my husband, Frank, I lived alone in our big house in Portland, grieving quietly. When my daughter Stephanie offered to move back home with her husband Brandon to take care of me, my heart swelled with gratitude. I felt blessed to have such a caring child. But one forgotten phone call shattered everything I believed about my daughter's intentions. What I discovered that afternoon changed not just our relationship, but the entire trajectory of both our lives. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. If you have ever trusted someone completely, only to discover their true motives, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because what I'm about to tell you is a story of betrayal strategy and ultimate justice. Now, let me tell you how I discovered what my own daughter really wanted. Life after Frank died felt like walking through fog. We had been married for 32 years and suddenly half of me was just gone. We met in Portland, Oregon when I was 23 and he was 25. I was working as a nurse at Providence Hospital and he came in one night with a broken arm from a construction accident. He was a mechanical engineer, brilliant with numbers and machines, but terrible at taking care of himself. I reset his arm and told him to stop being so reckless. He asked me out right there in the emergency room. We got married 2 years later on a rainy September afternoon. Rain on your wedding day is supposed to be good luck, and for us it was. We built a beautiful life together. 2 children, Stephanie and Kyle. A house in a quiet neighborhood with maple trees lining the street. Summer barbecues and winter holidays. Frank coaching Kyle's Little League team while I baked cookies for Stephanie's school fundraisers. Those were the golden years, the ones you look back on and realize you were happy without even knowing it at the time. Frank passed away 2 years ago from a massive stroke. One minute he was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, commenting on some political article. The next minute he was on the floor and I was screaming for someone to call 911. He died 3 days later in the hospital without ever waking up. The doctor said it was fast, that he probably did not suffer, but I suffered. I suffered through every single day after that, waking up to an empty bed and going to sleep in a house that felt too big and too quiet. The first 6 months were the hardest. My son Kyle was living in California working for some tech company in San Francisco. He called every week, visited once a month when he could get away. But he had his own life, his own career demanding his attention. Stephanie lived in Seattle with her husband Brandon. She worked in marketing for a mid-size firm, and Brandon was in sales for a software company. They had always lived in a small rented apartment, complaining about rent prices and how hard it was to save money. Then 6 months after Frank died, Stephanie called me. Her voice was warm and concerned. "Mom," she said, "you should not be alone in that big house. Brandon and I have been talking and we want to move in with you. We can take care of you, and honestly, it would help us save money too. We have been trying to put together a down payment for our own place, and the rent in Seattle is killing us." I remember how my heart lifted when she said that. My daughter wanted to take care of me. My daughter wanted to be close to me during this difficult time. I did not even hesitate. "I would love to have you here," I told her. "This house has too many empty rooms anyway." 2 weeks later, Stephanie and Brandon arrived with a moving truck. They took over the guest bedroom upstairs, the one with the big window overlooking the backyard. At first, everything felt wonderful. We cooked dinner together, all 3 of us in the kitchen like a real family. We watched movies in the evening. Brandon helped fix the leaky faucet in the downstairs bathroom and repainted the fence. Stephanie went grocery shopping with me, helped me sort through some of Frank's old clothes that I had not been able to touch. For the first month, I felt less alone. The house had life in it again. Voices and laughter instead of just the echo of my own footsteps. I started sleeping better at night knowing someone else was in the house with me. But then things began to shift, subtle things at first. Stephanie and Brandon started spending more time in their room with the door closed. They would have these quiet conversations that stopped the moment I walked by. When I asked what they were discussing, Stephanie would smile and say, "Oh, just work stuff, Mom. Nothing interesting." I noticed them measuring rooms. Not in an obvious way, but I would catch Brandon with a tape measure in the living room or Stephanie taking photos of the kitchen on her phone. When I asked about it, Stephanie laughed it off. "Just looking at some renovation ideas, Mom. This house could use some updating, do not you think?" Then Brandon started asking questions about the house value. "This house must be worth a lot now, right?" "Georgia," he said one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner, "property values in this neighborhood have really gone up." I felt uncomfortable but pushed the feeling away. "They are just curious," I told myself. They are young and interested in real estate. That is normal. But then I caught Stephanie browsing websites about nursing homes. I walked into the living room and saw her laptop screen before she quickly closed it. "Why are you looking at that?" I asked, my stomach tightening. She looked startled, then recovered. "Oh, just research for work, Mom. We are doing a campaign for a senior living facility. I need to understand the market." It made sense. But something in her eyes when she said it made me uneasy. For the first time since they moved in, I felt a small seed of doubt plant itself in my chest. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. These were the early warning signs, the ones I should have paid more attention to. But when you love someone, when you trust them completely, you explain away the little things. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You tell yourself you are imagining problems that are not really there. I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. But the truth has a way of revealing itself whether you are ready for it or not. It was a Wednesday afternoon in April when my entire world tilted on its axis. The weather was typical for Portland in spring gray clouds, threatening rain, but never quite delivering. I was upstairs in my bedroom folding laundry and listening to an audiobook, trying to fill the silence that still felt so heavy, even with Stephanie and Brandon in the house. Stephanie called up to me from the living room. "Mom, can you help me with something?" I paused my book and headed downstairs. "What do you need, honey?" "I am trying to find that old cookbook Grandma gave you," she said. "The one with the lemon cake recipe. I want to make it for Brandon's birthday next week. I think it might be in one of those boxes in the basement." The basement was not actually a basement, but more of a storage area under the house, accessible through a door in the hallway. We had been putting things down there for years. Old holiday decorations, boxes of books, Frank's tools that I could not bear to get rid of. "Sure, I will look for it," I said. I went down the narrow stairs into the storage area, pulling the chain to turn on the single light bulb. It took me about 10 minutes of digging through boxes before I found the cookbook tucked into a box labeled Kitchen Misk in Frank's careful handwriting. Seeing his handwriting still hurt like a small knife twist in my chest. I grabbed the cookbook and headed back upstairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard Stephanie's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone and I was about to call out to her that I had found the book, but then I heard my name and I froze. "So, when are we going to talk to her about the nursing home?" It was Brandon's voice, and it took me a second to realize Stephanie had him on speakerphone. She must have forgotten to turn the speaker off after calling him. "Not yet," Stephanie replied. "We need to wait a bit longer. If we push too soon, she will get suspicious." I stood there in the hallway, my hand gripping the cookbook so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart started pounding in my ears. "This house is worth at least $600,000, Brandon continued. "We could pay off all our debts and still have money left over for our own place. Maybe even that condo downtown we looked at." "I know," Stephanie said, and I could hear the eagerness in her voice. "But legally, the house is hers. We need her to sign it over to us first, or at least put my name on the deed. Once we do that, things will be easier." "Can we not just put her in a home and take over the house?" Brandon asked. "It is not that simple," Stephanie replied. "There are legal processes, but once she is in a facility, she will not need this big house anymore. We can convince her it is the best thing, that it is too much for her to manage alone. Then she will be more willing to transfer ownership." My legs felt weak. I leaned against the wall, afraid I might fall. These were my daughter's words, my daughter who I had carried for 9 months, who I had raised and loved and sacrificed for. "How much longer do we have to pretend to care?" Brandon's voice was casual, like he was asking about the weather. Stephanie laughed. "Not much longer. Just a few more months. Then we will have everything we want. This house, the money from selling it, freedom from worrying about rent. It is all going to work out perfectly." "What about Kyle?" Brandon asked. "He is too busy with his own life in California," Stephanie said dismissively. "He will not interfere. Besides, Mom always favored me anyway. She will listen to me." The words hit me like physical blows. Each sentence felt like a betrayal, layered on top of the last one. "I already looked at a few facilities," Stephanie continued. "There is one in Tacoma that is not too expensive. State-run, pretty basic, but it will do. We can put her there and visit once a month to keep up appearances. You know, play the caring daughter role." "Perfect," Brandon said. "This is going to work out great for us." "Yeah," Stephanie agreed. I just need to keep being the caring daughter for a little while longer. Not too hard. I have been doing it for 2 months already. What is a few more? They both laughed. The sound of their laughter, so casual and cruel, made my stomach turn. I quietly backed away from the living room, moving as carefully as I could down the hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the cookbook. I made my way back down to the storage area and sat on the bottom step, the cookbook in my lap, tears streaming down my face. This was my daughter, my Stephanie, the little girl I had rocked to sleep when she had nightmares. The teenager I had stayed up with during her first heartbreak, making hot chocolate and letting her cry on my shoulder. The young woman I had helped move into her first apartment, assembling furniture and hanging curtains. This was the person who wanted to throw me away like garbage so she could have my house. Not even because she wanted to take care of me. Not because she thought I would be better off in a facility, but because she wanted the money. She wanted to sell the house and use the money to pay off her debts and buy a condo. I was nothing but an obstacle to her, a problem to be managed and disposed of. I sat there in the dim light of the storage area for 15 minutes, crying silently. Then I wiped my eyes, took several deep breaths, and made a decision. I was not going to confront her, not yet. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I went back upstairs and found Stephanie in the kitchen, her phone put away, a bright smile on her face. "Did you find it?" she asked cheerfully. I held up the cookbook, forcing my own smile. "Right where I thought it would be." "You are the best, Mom," she said, taking the book and flipping through it. "This is going to be perfect." I looked at her, really looked at her. How had I not seen this before? How had I missed the calculation in her eyes, the fakeness in her smile? Or had it always been there and I had just chosen not to see it because she was my daughter? I went to bed early that night, claiming a headache. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to Stephanie and Brandon laughing in their room. Every sound they made felt like salt in a wound. I thought about 30 years of motherhood. Every scraped knee I had bandaged. Every school play I had attended. Every birthday party I had thrown. Every college tuition payment Frank and I had scrimped and saved to make. Every sacrifice, large and small, that parents make for their children. And this was what it had all led to. My daughter plotting to warehouse me in a cheap nursing home so she could steal my house. But as I lay there in the dark, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to harden into something else, something cold and clear. Because Stephanie did not know something. Something crucial. Something that was about to turn her entire plan on its head. This house was not mine to give her. And by the time she figured that out, it would be too late. The next morning, I waited until Stephanie and Brandon left for work. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person who knew my secret, Helen. Helen had been my best friend for over 30 years. We met when our kids were in kindergarten together, bonded over terrible school fundraisers, and even worse, parent-teacher conferences. She was 58 now, 3 years older than me. Her husband had died 5 years ago, leaving her with a substantial estate. No children, just her. She had tried for years to have kids, but it never happened, so she poured all that maternal energy into being the best friend anyone could ask for. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. "Georgia, is everything okay?" "You never call this early." "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need your help." I told her everything. The phone call I had overheard, Stephanie and Brandon's plan, every cruel word they had said. By the time I finished, I was crying again, all the pain from the previous night flooding back. "That ungrateful, horrible child," Helen said, her voice shaking with anger. "After everything you have done for her, after everything you sacrificed. How dare she? I do not know what to do, Helen. I feel so lost." There was a long pause. Then Helen said, "You know this house is legally mine, right? Stephanie has no claim to it whatsoever." "I know," I whispered. "But she does not know that. And here is where I need to explain something that happened 3 years ago. Something I never told my children because I was too proud, too embarrassed. After Frank died, I was drowning financially. Frank had been the main breadwinner. My nursing salary had been good, but I had retired early to take care of Frank during his last years when he started having health problems. We had savings, but not as much as we should have. And the house, this beautiful big house in a good neighborhood, came with property taxes that made me sick to look at. Maintenance costs, utility bills, insurance. 6 months after Frank passed, I ran the numbers. I could not afford to keep the house. I was going to have to sell it and move somewhere smaller, somewhere cheaper, maybe an apartment. The thought of leaving this house, the one Frank and I had bought together, where we had raised our children, where every room held memories, broke my heart all over again. Helen found out because I broke down crying at her house one afternoon. I told her everything. The bills, the taxes, the impossible math of trying to keep my home. "Let me buy it," she said immediately. I refused. I could not take that kind of help from her no matter how good a friend she was. But Helen was persistent. "Georgia, listen to me. I have more money than I know what to do with. Richard left me very comfortable. I have no kids to leave it to. Let me do this. I will buy the house at fair market value. You can live here rent-free for as long as you want. When you eventually move on, I will sell it or donate it to charity. You will have money in the bank from the sale, and you will not have to leave your home." It took her 3 weeks to convince me. Finally, I agreed. Helen bought the house for its appraised value of $575,000. I used that money to pay off the remaining mortgage, settle some of Frank's medical bills, and put the rest in savings. The agreement was simple and legal. Helen owned the house. I lived there rent-free until I decided to leave or passed away. After that, Helen could do whatever she wanted with the property. We kept it quiet. I did not want anyone to know. Not because Helen was not trustworthy, but because I did not want my children to think I was weak or unable to take care of myself. I did not want their pity. So, as far as Stephanie and Kyle knew, I still owned the house. They assumed I had inherited it outright from Frank. Now, sitting on the phone with Helen, I realized this secret was about to become the weapon I needed. "Helen," I said slowly, "what if we sold the house? Really sold it?" There was a pause. "Tell me what you are thinking." I laid out the idea forming in my mind. Stephanie and Brandon were planning to go to China in a few weeks. Brandon's company was sending him on a business trip, and Stephanie was tagging along. They would be gone for 2 weeks. What if while they were gone, Helen sold the house to a real buyer? I would move out. When Stephanie and Brandon came back, they would find the house sold and me gone. Helen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I love it. It is absolutely perfect. They want to use you and throw you away. Let us show them they never had anything to use in the first place." "But where would I go?" I asked. "You will come live with me," Helen said immediately. "I have 4 bedrooms in this house and only use one. We will be roommates like we always joked about. Come on, Georgia, we will have fun. We will drink wine and watch terrible reality television and not have to deal with ungrateful children." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Helen said firmly. "This is happening. Let me call my real estate agent today. We will put the house on the market immediately. With the housing market the way it is right now, it will sell fast. You start packing your personal things, but do it slowly so Stephanie does not notice." "When is this China trip?" "They leave Monday, 10 days from now." "Perfect," Helen said. "We have time. We will close before they get back. Georgia, they are going to learn the hardest lesson of their lives. You do not treat your mother like this. You do not treat anyone like this." After I hung up with Helen, I sat in Frank's old armchair, the one I could never bring myself to get rid of because it still smelled faintly like his cologne. I thought about what I was about to do. Part of me felt guilty. This was my daughter. But then I remembered her voice on that phone call. Just a few more months of pretending to care. A cheap nursing home in Tacoma. Visiting once a month to keep up appearances. She had made her choice. Now I was making mine. The next few days passed in a strange fog. I smiled at Stephanie over breakfast. I asked Brandon about his work. I played the role of the oblivious, grateful mother. Meanwhile, Helen was working behind the scenes. She had a real estate agent come to look at the house while Stephanie and Brandon were at work. Professional photos were taken. The listing went live on a Thursday afternoon with the description, "Charming family home in desirable Portland neighborhood. Well-maintained move-in ready." The asking price was $650,000. By Friday evening, there were 3 offers. By Saturday, Helen had accepted an offer from a young couple named Sarah and Michael. They had 2 small children and had been looking for a house in a good school district. They offered full asking price, waived inspection, and wanted a fast close. They could move in within 2 weeks. It was perfect timing, almost too perfect to be real. But it was real. The universe was aligning to teach Stephanie exactly what she deserved to learn. I started packing my things in small increments. A box here, a box there. Clothes I knew I would need. Photo albums, my jewelry. Frank's watch that I kept in my nightstand. I packed late at night after Stephanie and Brandon went to bed, storing boxes in my closet where they would not see them. Every item I packed felt like another step toward freedom. another step away from the daughter who saw me as nothing but an obstacle to money. On Sunday, 1 week before Stephanie and Brandon's trip, I met with Helen and her lawyer. We went over all the paperwork for the sale. Everything was legal and proper. Helen was selling her house to Sarah and Michael. I was simply the current occupant who would be moving out. There was nothing Stephanie could do about it, even if she wanted to. She had no legal claim to this property. None at all. Monday morning, the day Stephanie and Brandon were leaving for China, I woke up early. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, trying to act normal. Stephanie came downstairs with her suitcase looking excited. "I cannot believe we are actually going," she said, pouring herself coffee. 2 weeks in China. This is going to be amazing. "You will have a wonderful time," I said, and I meant it. Let her have this trip. Let her come back smiling and excited, thinking her plan was still on track. The fall would be so much harder that way. Brandon loaded their bags into the car. Stephanie hugged me at the door. "Take care of yourself, Mom. We will bring you back some souvenirs." I hugged her back, breathing in her familiar scent. This might be the last time we hugged for a very long time. Maybe forever. "Have a wonderful time," I said. "Do not worry about anything here." They drove away, waving from the car windows. I waved back, standing in the doorway until they turned the corner and disappeared. Then I went inside, closed the door, and allowed myself to cry one more time. Not for what I was about to do, but for the daughter I thought I had, the one who apparently had never really existed. Then I dried my eyes, picked up my phone, and called Helen. "They are gone. Let us do this." The first 2 days after Stephanie and Brandon left, I moved carefully. I continued packing my personal belongings, working mostly at night. During the day, I went through the motions of normal life just in case any neighbors were watching. I did not want anyone mentioning to Stephanie later that they had seen moving trucks at the house while she was gone. On Tuesday, Helen called with news. The closing is set for Thursday. Sarah and Michael are so excited. They keep sending me messages about how much their kids are going to love the backyard. I felt a pang of something. Not quite regret, but a sadness. This house had been my home for so long, but it had not really been mine for 3 years now. And staying here, living under the same roof as a daughter who wanted to discard me like trash, that would be worse than leaving. Thursday came. I met Helen, Sarah, Michael, and both lawyers at the title company. The whole process took about 2 hours. Signatures, paperwork, certified checks. Sarah and Michael were in their early 30s, both with kind faces and genuine smiles. Sarah had tears in her eyes when she got the keys. "This is our dream home," she told me. "We have been looking for over a year. The moment we saw the listing, we knew this was it. Our kids are going to grow up here just like I am sure your family did. I hope you will be very happy here," I said, and I meant it. This house deserved a family who would love it, not a daughter who saw it as nothing but a liquidated asset. "When can we move in?" Michael asked Helen. "Georgia needs a few days to finish moving out," Helen said. "How about next Monday?" "That works perfectly," Michael said. "We will have the movers ready." After the closing, Helen drove me to her house in Seattle. Her place was beautiful, a 4-bedroom craftsman-style home near Lake Washington. She had already prepared the guest room for me, bringing in fresh flowers and new towels. "Welcome home," she said, hugging me in the driveway. That night, we sat on her back porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset over the lake. "How do you feel?" Helen asked. "Strange," I admitted. "Sad, but also relieved." "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Helen said. "You are allowed to grieve what you thought you had, even while you are glad to be free of what it really was." Over the next few days, I made several trips back to Portland to collect the rest of my things. Helen hired a moving company to help. We packed up my clothes, my books, all the photo albums and mementos from my life with Frank. The furniture stayed, most of it. Sarah and Michael were buying the house furnished since they were moving from a small apartment and did not have much. By Sunday, 1 week after Stephanie and Brandon had left for China, my part of the house was completely empty. All traces of my 30 years there were gone, packed into boxes now stored in Helen's garage and spare bedroom. I walked through each room one last time, saying goodbye to the memories. The kitchen where Frank and I had danced on our anniversary. The living room where we had opened Christmas presents with the kids. The bedroom where we had whispered secrets to each other in the dark. But I also thought about Stephanie's voice on that phone call. How much longer do we have to pretend to care? That memory hardened my resolve. I sat down at Helen's dining room table and wrote the letter. It took me 2 hours and 3 drafts before I got it right. I needed Stephanie to understand exactly what had happened and why. The letter read, "Dear Stephanie, by the time you read this, you will have discovered that this house has been sold. You are probably confused and angry. Let me explain. Last month, I overheard a phone call between you and Brandon. You forgot to turn off the speaker on your phone. I heard everything. Your plan to put me in a nursing home. Your plan to take this house. Your discussion about how much longer you had to pretend to care about me. I heard you laugh about it, Stephanie. You laughed about throwing your mother away so you could pay off your debts. But here is what you did not know. This house was never mine. Not for the past 3 years. After your father died, I could not afford to keep it. The property taxes, the maintenance, all of it was too much on my retirement income. I was going to lose it anyway. Helen, my dear friend, bought this house from me 3 years ago. She let me live here rent-free out of kindness and friendship. I never told you or Kyle because I did not want you to think I was weak or struggling. I am glad I never told you because now I know exactly who you are. You are someone who sees her mother as an obstacle to money. Someone who would warehouse me in a cheap facility and visit once a month to keep up appearances. Helen has sold this house to a wonderful family who will actually appreciate it. I have moved out. You are not welcome where I am now. I gave you everything, Stephanie. I loved you with every fiber of my being. I sacrificed and worked and did everything a mother is supposed to do. But you saw me as nothing more than a barrier to $600,000. I hope this house was worth losing your mother over, because you have lost me. Not because I am in a nursing home or because I am dead, but because I choose not to have someone in my life who could be so cruel, so calculating, so heartless, even if that someone is my own daughter. Do not try to find me. Do not try to contact me. You made your choice when you decided to use me. Now I am making mine. Mom. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope, and wrote Stephanie's name on the front in clear letters. On Sunday evening, I drove back to Portland one last time. I parked down the street and walked to the house in the fading light. Sarah and Michael were moving in the next day. I had already given them a heads up that my daughter might show up. I taped the letter to the front door right at eye level where Stephanie could not miss it. Then I put the house keys in the mailbox and sent Sarah a text. Keys are in the mailbox. The house is yours. Welcome home. I stood on the sidewalk looking at the house one more time. Then I turned and walked away. I did not look back. Looking back would have broken my resolve, and I needed to be strong now. Strong for myself in a way I had not been strong enough to be when Stephanie first moved in. I drove back to Helen's house in Seattle. She had dinner waiting, pasta with homemade sauce and a bottle of good wine. We ate and talked about everything except Stephanie. We talked about Helen's upcoming trip to Italy. We talked about the book club we were going to join. We talked about taking a painting class together. We talked about the future because dwelling on the past was not going to change anything. Stephanie and Brandon were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, probably watching movies and eating airplane food, completely unaware that their entire plan had just crumbled to dust. They would find out soon enough. In about 36 hours, they would be standing on that front porch reading my letter and realizing that all their scheming had been for nothing. I fell asleep that night in Helen's guest room in clean sheets that smelled like lavender. And for the first time in 2 months, I slept soundly. No more walking on eggshells in my own home. No more pretending not to notice the measuring tape and the whispered conversations. No more living with people who saw me as a burden to be managed. I was free, and it felt better than I ever could have imagined. Stephanie and Brandon's flight from Beijing landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport at 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. I did not know this at the time, but Kyle told me later. He had his own sources of information. According to what Kyle pieced together from angry voicemails Stephanie left him, the flight home had been pleasant. Stephanie and Brandon spent the trip talking about their vacation, the Great Wall, the Forbidden City, all the tourist things they had done. They also apparently spent time talking about their next steps with me. Stephanie told Brandon she was going to start talking to me about senior living facilities that weekend. Start planting seeds, she said. Make Mom think it was her own idea to downsize. They collected their luggage and headed to their car in long-term parking. The drive from Seattle to Portland takes about 3 hours, and they made good time. Stephanie tried calling me several times during the drive. My phone, which now had a new number, did not ring. The old number was disconnected. After the third attempt, Stephanie left a voicemail. Mom, we are on our way home. Call me back. I want to tell you about the trip. They arrived at the house around 7:45 in the evening. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. Stephanie noticed immediately that there was a car in the driveway. Not mine. A different car, a blue Honda CR-V. Whose car is that? Stephanie asked Brandon as they pulled up to the curb. Maybe one of your mom's friends is visiting, Brandon suggested. They got out, grabbed their suitcases from the trunk, and walked toward the front door. That is when Stephanie saw it. The envelope taped to the door with her name written across it in my handwriting. But above that, there was a small note in different handwriting. Stephanie pulled both pieces of paper off the door. The note read, "Dear previous residents, we are the new owners of this home as of last Monday. Please contact us if you have left any belongings that need to be retrieved. Sarah and Michael Fletcher." Below that was a phone number. Stephanie stared at the note. Her brain could not process the words. New owners. What did that mean? She looked at Brandon, her face pale. This does not make sense. Let me see that, Brandon said, grabbing the note. He read it, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. This is some kind of mistake. It has to be. But Stephanie was already opening the second envelope, the one with her name on it. She unfolded my letter and started reading. Brandon watched her face change as she read, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her eyes go wide. What does it say? Brandon demanded. Stephanie did not answer. She just kept reading, her hands shaking. When she finished, she read it again, as if reading it a second time might change the words. Then she handed it to Brandon without saying anything. Brandon read the letter. I watched his face, Stephanie told Kyle later in one of her angry rants, and I saw him realize that we had lost everything. This is insane, Brandon said when he finished reading. She heard us? How the phone call, Stephanie whispered. I must have left the speaker on. She heard everything. Brandon swore loudly. So this house was never hers. It was Helen's the whole time, apparently. And Helen sold it to these people. The Fletchers. Stephanie looked at the note again, then at the car in the driveway. They are already here. They are inside our house. It is not our house, Brandon said bitterly. It was never our house. It was Helen's house, and now it is their house. We never had any claim to it at all. At that moment, the front door opened. A woman in her early 30s stood there, a baby on her hip. She looked at Stephanie and Brandon with polite confusion. Can I help you? Stephanie tried to compose herself. This is my mother's house. There has been some kind of mistake. Sarah, that was her name, shook her head gently. No mistake. My husband and I purchased this house from Helen 2 weeks ago. The sale closed last Thursday. We have all the legal paperwork. This is our home now. But my mother, Stephanie started. Does not live here anymore, Sarah finished. We were told she moved out before we moved in. If you are looking for her, I cannot help you. We have never met her. Michael appeared behind Sarah, a protective hand on her shoulder. Is there a problem? No problem, Brandon said, quickly grabbing Stephanie's arm. We were just leaving. Sorry to bother you. He pulled Stephanie back toward their car. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of remorse, Kyle told me later, but tears of rage and frustration. She took everything from us. Stephanie sobbed as they sat in the car. How could she do this? How could she? Brandon's voice was harsh. How could we, Stephanie? We were planning to throw her in a nursing home and steal her house. She just beat us to the punch. This is all wrong, Stephanie insisted. She is my mother. She is supposed to forgive me. She is supposed to put up with anything from me. I do not think that is how it works, Brandon said. They drove to a hotel that night, checking into a cheap motel near the airport because they did not have much money left after the China trip. They spent the night arguing, blaming each other, trying to figure out what to do next. The next morning, Stephanie started trying to reach me. She called my old number disconnected. She called Kyle. Kyle answered on the third ring. What do you want, Stephanie? Do you know where Mom is? Stephanie demanded. Yes, Kyle said calmly. Where I am not telling you. Kyle, please. I need to talk to her. She does not want to talk to you. She made that very clear to me. Stephanie tried a different approach. Kyle, it is not what you think. There was a misunderstanding. Really, Kyle's voice dripped with sarcasm. Mom told me about the phone call she overheard. about your plan to put her in a nursing home in Tacoma so you could take the house. That sounds pretty clear to me. I was not really going to do it. Stephanie lied. We were just talking, just thinking out loud. Thinking out loud about how long you had to keep pretending to care, Kyle asked. Mom told me everything you said, Stephanie. Every single word. Do not insult my intelligence by claiming it was just talk. I made a mistake, Stephanie said, her voice breaking. I am sorry. I just want to tell her I am sorry. You are not sorry for what you did, Kyle said coldly. You are sorry you got caught. There is a difference. A big difference. Please, Kyle. She is my mother too, and you treated her like garbage. You wanted to warehouse her in some cheap facility and visit once a month for appearances. You laughed about it, Stephanie. You laughed. I was wrong, Stephanie admitted. But I am her daughter. She has to forgive me. No, Kyle said. She does not. Just like you did not have to care about her. She does not have to forgive you. Goodbye, Stephanie. He hung up. Stephanie tried calling back, but Kyle did not answer. She tried other avenues. She called my old friends, but no one would tell her anything. She went to the church I used to attend, but I had not been there in months. She even tried to contact Helen through Facebook, but Helen had blocked her. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new life in Seattle. Helen's house was beautiful and comfortable. My room had a view of the lake. We fell into an easy routine, Helen and I. Morning coffee on the porch, afternoon walks around the neighborhood, evening dinners that we cooked together. 1 week after Stephanie and Brandon returned from China, Kyle flew up from California to visit me. Helen picked him up from the airport, and when he walked through the door, I burst into tears. My son, my good son, who had always been steady and kind, he hugged me tight. I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry about Stephanie. It is not your fault, I said. We spent the weekend together, the three of us. Kyle told me about Stephanie's attempts to find me. How are you holding up? He asked. Better than I expected, I admitted. I thought I would feel guilty, but mostly I just feel relieved. You should not feel guilty, Kyle said firmly. She planned to betray you in the worst possible way. You just protected yourself. Before Kyle left, he asked me the question I had been asking myself. Do you think you will ever forgive her? I do not know, I said honestly. Right now, I cannot imagine it. Maybe someday, but not anytime soon. Kyle nodded. I understand. And for what it is worth, I support you completely. What she did was unforgivable. After Kyle left, life continued. Helen and I joined a book club. We took a watercolor painting class at the community center. We volunteered at a local food bank twice a week. I made new friends, women my age who were widows or divorced, all of us navigating life after loss in our own ways. I thought about Stephanie sometimes, wondered where she was, how she was doing, but I did not reach out. I could not. Every time I thought about making contact. I remembered her voice on that phone call. How much longer do we have to pretend to care? That memory was like a wall I could not climb over. 3 months after the incident, I heard through the grapevine someone who knew someone that Stephanie and Brandon had moved into a small apartment in a rough part of Portland. Their relationship was strained. Brandon blamed Stephanie for the whole mess, and Stephanie blamed me. Neither of them took responsibility for their own actions. I felt a twinge of something when I heard that. Not quite satisfaction, but a sense of justice. They had planned to profit from my misery, and instead they got nothing but the consequences of their own greed. Helen and I were sitting on her porch one evening, about 4 months after everything happened, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She turned to me and asked, "Do you regret what you did?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "No," I said finally. "I regret that it had to happen. I regret that my daughter turned out to be someone capable of such cruelty. But I do not regret standing up for myself. I do not regret refusing to be used and discarded." Good, Helen said, raising her wine glass. "Because you did the right thing. You taught her that actions have consequences. That is the last and maybe most important lesson a parent can teach." We clinked our glasses together as the sun dipped below the horizon, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. Real, genuine peace. It has been 6 months now since that Wednesday afternoon when I overheard the phone call that changed everything. 6 months since I sold the house Stephanie thought was mine and started a new life here in Seattle with Helen. I have settled into a routine that feels surprisingly fulfilling. 3 mornings a week, I volunteer at a senior center, helping with activities and simply spending time with people who appreciate company. I joined a water aerobics class at the local pool. Helen and I have season tickets to a small theater company downtown. We see plays and musicals, things Frank and I never made time for when he was alive. I think about Stephanie less and less as time goes by. The sharp pain of her betrayal has dulled into something more manageable, a scar rather than an open wound. Kyle visits once a month now. We have grown closer through all of this, my son and I. He tells me he is proud of how I handled the situation, how I stood up for myself instead of letting Stephanie walk all over me. I learned something important through all of this. I learned that loving someone, even your own child, does not mean accepting abuse. It does not mean allowing yourself to be used. It does not mean sacrificing your dignity to maintain a relationship with someone who sees you as nothing more than an obstacle to what they want. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away, is to refuse to participate in your own mistreatment, is to say with actions rather than words, I deserve better than this. I also learned about the difference between regret and grief. I do not regret what I did, but I do grieve for the daughter I thought I had. I grieve for the relationship I believed we shared. I grieve for all those years I spent thinking Stephanie loved me the way I loved her unconditionally and completely. But grief is different from regret. Grief is about mourning what you have lost. Regret is about wishing you had made different choices. I grieve, but I do not regret. If I had it to do over again, I would make the same choice. Helen has been more than a friend through all of this. She has been family in the truest sense. The family you choose rather than the family you are born with. We laugh together every day. We support each other through hard moments. We celebrate small victories and mourn small losses. This is what real family looks like, I have come to understand. People who genuinely care about your well-being, not people who pretend to care while plotting behind your back. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if Stephanie will ever truly understand what she lost. I do not know if there will ever come a day when I can forgive her. Right now, that day feels impossibly far away. But I have learned not to close doors completely. Life is long and people sometimes change. I am not holding my breath, but I am not barricading the possibility either. What I do know is this. I am 55 years old. I lost my husband. I lost the home we built together. I lost my daughter to her own greed. But I did not lose myself. I did not lose my dignity. I did not allow myself to be discarded like trash. I stood up, I made a plan, I executed it, and I walked away from a situation that would have destroyed me if I had stayed. Stephanie may never understand what she lost when she decided money was more important than her mother, but I know what I gained. I gained my self-respect. I gained my freedom. I gained the knowledge that I am strong enough to do hard things, to make difficult choices, to put my own well-being first, even when it breaks my heart. And that knowledge that strength is worth more than any house could ever be. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to make the choice between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love because staying would have destroyed you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your stories. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories about family betrayal and finding strength you did not know you had. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to stand up for yourself, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope that whatever challenges you are facing in your own life, you find the courage to choose yourself, to refuse to accept mistreatment from anyone, even family, to walk away when staying would cost you your soul. May you find peace in your choices, strength in your convictions, and people in your life who love you for who you are, not for what you can give them. Take care of yourselves. You deserve